Here's a little bit about me. When you see an Indian guy that looks like me, you probably expect a different kind of accent. So I'll tell you why I sound different. I was born in Bombay, I was raised in New York City, and as an early adult, young adult I should say, I moved to Russia. So I spent most of my 20s in Russia. Namaste, my name is Ajay Kamalakaran. I'm a writer from Bombay, India. Well, I'm also an independent journalist and my main focus is Russia. But as a writer, I come to Sri Lanka every time I want to write a new work of fiction because this country really has the right atmosphere and ambience for me to be at my creative best. So I spent most of my 20s in Russia and I lived in a place called Sakhalin Island where I was the editor of a newspaper called the Sakhalin Times. When it comes to Sri Lanka, I've been coming here every single year since 2002. So I've lost count, but I've been here more than 20 times for sure. And I love everything about this country, the culture, the food, the people, especially the people, the colors, the nature, the sun, of course. Even though we have plenty of sunshine in Bombay, there's something about Sri Lanka. I think it's like you're already part of the South Seas. There's a very romantic feel in this country, which we don't have so much back in the mainland. It's great to be here. I enjoy myself here because as an Indian person, I enjoy a great degree of anonymity. So I can be completely anonymous. I can walk on the streets and no one will know that I'm Indian, but people just think I'm a local person. But I still have this cover of anonymity, a word that I just don't seem to be able to pronounce this morning. But I like being anonymous here. And at the same time, I fit in very easily and I really enjoy that. So you're actually abroad when you're not. So it's a good feeling to be here. So I've been writing since I was 10 years old. So we used to have writing competitions in school in New York and my teachers always told me that I'm very creative. So I enjoy doing this and I really thought that, hey, writing and journalism is a thing for me. And by the time I was 17, it was time for me to enter junior college and university. I was discouraged from taking up journalism. I was discouraged from studying the fine arts. I was told that in India, it's only for people who get the most terrible grades in public exams who end up studying fine arts. So I studied commerce and then banking and finance and I have a complete financial background and I never really enjoyed it, not for 1 second. It wasn't my dream. So I decided, okay, I've always been a writer. I've won university writing competitions and international essay competitions, so I'm going to stick to this. So essentially what I did was I moved to the Russian Far East when I was 24 and lived there for 4 years in an island called Sakhalin. So this book, Globetrotting for Love and Other Stories from Sakhalin Island, is a fictionalized account of my life in the Russian Far East. It's completely fiction, of course, but I got a lot of inspiration from incidents that I saw and from people that I knew. And writing really relaxes me. It makes me feel much happier. It calms me down. And I feel like I'm in some sort of a zone when I'm writing. There's no greater feeling for me than writing something that I think is well written. My first work of fiction was written in Mount Lavinia. So I would wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, go for a swim in the ocean, come back to my cottage and hear the morning prayers and have a cup of tea with that, start writing, and I'd work throughout the day, but by early evening I'd be free, so I'd had the rest of the day to enjoy myself by probably going to the beach again or meeting friends. So it's a great way of having like a double life here. So that's one of the reasons why I choose to come and write here. So I can have all the isolation that I want, but I also, because I'm quite a social person, I also have the opportunity to socialize and to mix with people, to make new friends and to do something interesting. Right, so my latest book, A Week in the Life of Svetlana, a short novel, was released this week by the great Sri Lankan writer and artist, Dr. Sibil Vettasinga. And the book, which is also written here, is about an eccentric Ukrainian woman, somebody who's got joint Russian-Ukrainian citizenship, and she lives in Moscow, but she's very loyal to her homeland. She's very loyal to Ukraine, and she has a very complicated, fast-paced, interesting life, and she seems to blame Russia for all her problems. Every time she thinks of a problem, she traces it back somehow to Russia or to the government. But the whole idea of the book is for people to understand how the Russian society functions. When people from Sri Lanka, when they visit Russia, they go to the Kremlin, they go to the Red Square, to Gorky Park, and maybe the Novodevichi Monastery, and that's all they see of Moscow. They see other tourists, they see people from other parts of Russia, but they don't really get how the pulse of Moscow works. So the idea of this book is for people to read and to know how Moscowites live, way beyond the touristy parts of the city. And at the same time, I want people to actually feel that they're in Moscow. So when you keep up with the pace of this book, you're not just reading about Moscow, you are in Moscow. You're taking the metro, you're taking the trams, you're using the pedestrian glass bridges. There are a couple of them over the Muscat River, and you're actually there with me when you read this book. So that was the whole idea behind it. And I decided that the international launch of this book has to be here in Sri Lanka because the book was written here. Since I wrote this book, Globetrotting for Love, and other stories from Sakhalin Island, I decided that I want to be the first international writer to write a trilogy of the Russian Far East. So my next book is a novel set in a place called Khabarovsk, which is a city in the Russian Far East. It's one of the most beautiful cities in the world. It's 30 kilometers away from China. It's on the Amur River. It has forests which have the world's largest tigers, the Amur tigers, snow leopards, and in the winter it goes to -40, and in summer it goes to +40 with humidity. Even while I'm writing that trilogy, I'd like to write a book about Sri Lanka because I know the society of Colombo so well. As a writer, it's my job to show a mirror to the society that I'm in. So maybe if I write a book about Colombo society, middle class, upper middle class, high class, and lower middle class, and let people read this, maybe they'll recognize themselves in this book, written by an insider who's an outsider, who's actually a bit of both. You know, things that people go through. For example, my favorite bus in the city is the 138. I like the way those buses are driven by race car drivers who look like they'll knock people off high-level road. And so, you know, try and bring the idiosyncrasies of Colombo life into a book and put it together. Since I've been here so many times, I'm not a parachute journalist who pops up here, sees something for 3 hours and says, okay, I know this country inside out. So the idea is to maybe write a book about this country, maybe come back here again for a month and write whatever I can about Colombo so people can have a good laugh. For me, to promote slow travel, the kind of travel where people integrate within communities, when they live with others, learn their languages, and you know, be a part of a society you go to, and not just go and take 10 pics and look for the kind of food that you want to eat. And instead of reckless tourism, you know, I know how open a society Sri Lanka is and how people love it when outsiders come here, learn a bit of the language, and do things like a Sri Lankan person does. Now, I'd really like more people to, you know, to bring the world together in a way where people get to really understand each other, look at cultural assimilation. So a long-term goal would be to somehow bring the world closer together in the right sense. I don't mean by developing a kind of technology that's better than WhatsApp, where, oh yeah, you can talk to your cousin in Melbourne. What I really want to do is to find ways where people can really understand each other better. And we have so much to give each other, to learn from each other. And if we do that, each and every one of us can be the best versions of ourselves if we learn something from another society, from another culture, from another way of life. And I know Sri Lanka has a lot to offer to the world, but I also want people from here to really integrate themselves and to be a part of so that, you know, we build a better world. as idealistic as that sounds, I think the right way to do it is to promote responsible travel, slow travel, and get people to really get to know other cultures and civilizations and languages really well. You can definitely find me in Nugegora for a few weeks a year for sure. But I mainly live in Bombay, but I spend a big chunk of my year in Russia. Right, and on social media, I have a Facebook fan page. It's, I think it's Ajay.Sakhalin, as in Sakhalin Island. And I'm also very active on Twitter and on Instagram. And on my Facebook page, you can check out regular videos that I make from wherever I go. And I'm pretty sure that watching some of my videos will get you in a much better mood because they're usually very optimistic and full of wonder, even at this point in my life.